Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the new airplanes which are coming in the next major update for War Thunder, update Seek and Destroy. Now there's two things I want to get into before we chat about these vehicles. Number one, the Benelux aviation tree, which is in the French tech tree. I will be covering this in a separate video. It's basically this line right here. Don't worry, we'll have a look at it, but in this video, we're just going to focus on everything else, just to make it its own little thing. The other part to also talk about is they do now have separated BRs, actually visually in the UI. So you can see here, it shows the battle rating for air realistic and also the battle rating for ground realistic, which is really cool, and I'm very glad they added this little thing in. And if you are a top-tier air battle aficionado, they have now added in the option to participate in battles with smaller teams. And yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? You can have smaller ones if you want to, and it happens battle rating 10.0 or higher. So basically for the guys with all the crazy missiles. And do we have a lot of crazy missiles here? I'll do a separate video talking about each of the vehicles that has the different active radar homing missiles. In this video, we'll just focus on the new ones, but there is a lot of them. Basically, we start off with the F-15C MSIP2. This is the American vehicle that is coming in with the active radar homing stuff. Basically, it's going to be after the F-15A, and it is a full-on upgrade. What is kind of cool about this F-15C is it has some really interesting drop tanks, and also a million other drop tanks if you want over 100 minutes of fuel. But what you can also do, and I kind of want to show you where the drop tanks are, right? So if you just put on this, you can see here how this is like a lot thinner, and you don't have any excess here. But if you actually put on the drop tanks, you can see how it adds this curved bulge, and also the amount of fuel here. So I think that's actually really cool on the vehicle. So you can bring more fuel. The vehicle has access to the standard AIM-9M and also the new missile coming in for America, the AIM-120 AMRAAM. This is, of course, the new active radar homing missile. There's a bunch of different active radar homings coming in, but this one is specifically for the American vehicle. It's on a lot of others too, though, so don't be surprised. The F-15C also is upgraded in different areas. It does have access, compared to the A, to HMD, and it does have a pretty powerful radar in the form of the ANAPG-63V1. This has the TWS mode, which is perfect for active radar homing missiles. It also has 240 countermeasures, plus the Pratt & Whitney F100 PW220 good old engines, plus the 20mm Vulcan, which is on all of these American planes. So you have plenty of ammo on the gun, plenty of ammo when it comes to missiles, and also plenty of fuel nowadays. So if you really want to be a missile bus, you can do. And also with the way that the fuel slider works now, you could probably take a lot less of this and then just remove a bunch of your fuel tanks once you get to the battle. One thing to note, though, is you can't seem to be able to jettison these. This is just part of the model once you get access to it. So just watch out for that. Other weapons this thing gets access to, the AIM-7M, of course, and also a bunch of bombs, including some GBUs. So the TV-guided 2,000 pounders that it can bring along. You could also, once again, bring along some bombs with the fuel tanks if you want to, but it's probably not best to, especially in ground forces. So yeah, that's something to mention as well. Also, the top BR now is 13 instead of 12, so you will be able to have at least a bit better BR decompression in air compared to in ground, which is still pretty decompressed. The next vehicle is very different to the F-15C. It's the F-4F KWS LV, specifically the F-4F KWS LV Ice Phantom 2. This is the modernized version of the F4 that the Germans got access to. They obviously had the program to upgrade their old ones before other vehicles were ready. You can see it's 12.7 in aerialistic and 11.7 in ground. It does have access to some, once again, nice missiles, has a decent amount of countermeasures, not a lot compared to a few of the other vehicles such as the Gripens around, but good enough. And the biggest disappointment about this vehicle for me is not that it gets access to AIM-120s, because obviously that's pretty good, but it's the fact it only gets AIM-9Ls. Everybody else is running around with either R-73s, or they're running around with Magic 2s, or they're running around with AIM-9Ms, which all have IRCCMs, where this machine only gets AIM-9Ls. The AIM-120 should be good though, and with the rest of the bombs, you could actually bring this as a ground pounder. It does also get access to the Mavericks, so you can bring those along too. One of the things to mention about this vehicle as well is it isn't finished. A lot of people have pointed out that the RWR is just an ANAPR 36. I'm pretty sure it's going to get a different one, but once again, we'll have to see what goes on with the vehicle itself. It also has the ANAPG 65GY, which has all of the different modes that you would want, especially for the active radar homing missiles. It doesn't have HMD, so that kind of sucks. Instead, you are just stuck with the standard way of locking on. So it's a big downgrade compared to the F-15, and it will have to face the F-15 all the time, which just sucks for it. To counter the F-15, there's a new Su-27 with the beautiful blue camouflage, which is just really, really nice to see. And once again, a new BR-13 vehicle. This Su-27SM is very similar to the standard Su-27. It has the N001 VEP radar, which gives it the TWS mode and also all of the other ones. At the same time, it has a pretty powerful RWR, meaning that it can see what's coming in, and also HMD. It still shouldn't exactly be the most maneuverable vehicle around the place, but what it will have access to is an advanced set of weapons. This vehicle has access to the R-73 and also the R-27s, but the R-77, which is the new active radar homing missile for Russia. This has a better overload than the AIM-120, but doesn't seem to have as much time to actually hit the target, so a shorter range. So much better for kind of like dogfighting or lower distance engagements, but still very powerful at the end of the day, and the same lock range as the AIM-120 as well. What's cool is they've actually added a band to the radar, so it tells you where your maximum launch is for stuff like this. I can kind of show you it down here. But the other thing that the Su-27SM has is it does have extra kind of... it has extra ground ordnance that's really cool too. So if we actually select the R-77 here, and if we actually find a target, which should be in the air, hopefully in the air, it would be weird if it was on the ground. But if you see the target here, if it can pick it up. So you see how on the radar, it shows you not just where the target is, but also where the band is, so how far the target can be out. It also shows you the lead of the missile to the target. So there's just a ton of cool things going on with this one. And yeah, it's something to definitely look at and appreciate. This seems to be coming in for a lot of the radars. You can see the HMD there, and also the TWS working with it. So yeah, it's going to be pretty cool to see how everything goes. So yeah, just one of the things to look at and be pretty happy with. I still think the way to defend against these things is the same way of dealing with other stuff. It's just kind of how it is. They also added this. I don't know if this is actually been in the game before. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember seeing this, where they actually give you the extension speed limits on different parts of the airframe. And that's really cool. That's pretty awesome. I would love if they actually added more of this. I might have just missed it from previously because I don't pay attention too much to this, but yeah, I just noticed it now, which is kind of cool. So yeah, this is a direct upgrade of the standard Su-27. The other kind of munitions you can get access to is this new KAB 1500 KR. It's a 1500 kilo TV guided bomb, and also it gets a bunch of other TV guided bombs that you can hit from space. Also, if you want, you can have 30 to 250 kilo bombs if you want to, and a bunch of other stuff too. Not too many rockets though, just a little bit here and there to be able to grow. The main reason why you take this thing is for its air superiority role. Obviously, there are some other stuff too. For Britain, there's a few vehicles, starting off with the Bison. Now, the Bison is just a very upgraded MiG-21. The thing that the Bison is kind of known for is the fact it's a huge modernization, and that means a modernization in every single way. Unfortunately, it doesn't have right now in the game all the modernization stuff that would make it unique. The first thing that it's missing is the R-77. So it doesn't have active radar homing missiles. Instead, it just has these semi-active ones in the form of the R-27R, and then also the big old IR missile, which is the R-27T1. It does get the R-73Es though, which are just the export version of the standard R-73. So it does get the IR-CCM, IR-guided all-aspect missiles, but it only gets 2 of them, and that kind of sucks. It only gets 2 500 kilo bombs as well. So this thing should have a better radar too, but I don't think it does right now compared to the standard MiG-21. I might be wrong about that, but it does have access to HMD, which is cool, and a pretty good RWR as well. So the vehicle also has a ton of countermeasures. It can bring an external fuel tank as well. The countermeasures are actually built into the vehicle, which is not the same as a lot of the other MiG-21s. So you can see here, even with the pod of the fuel tank not there, it's still able to have the 120 countermeasures, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. But it is pretty limited in its weaponry, just like a lot of the premium MiG-21s, and at 12.0 it's going to face a lot of 12.7 13.0 vehicles. If there is a BR which becomes powerful, like the 11.3 11.7, this one will be really good, and it will be really fun to play. But if this thing just gets forced into up tiers, it will kind of suck. You can see the countermeasures here, by the way, in this setup. It looks really cool. And I really like the way that they've actually just kind of put it onto the wing. One of the cool things about a lot of the kind of aviation vehicles in the game is just like the little tweaks they do over and over again. Like, for example, for the Jaguars, they've actually added drop tanks to them all. So you can see here with the Jaguar JR1A, it now has some drop tanks you can bring along. So every Jaguar has drop tanks, which is really cool. Then moving on, we have the Tornado F3, and you might be asking, what is the difference between the Tornado F3 Late and the Tornado F3? Well, basically the weapons. That's pretty much it. Everything else seems pretty much similar. Maybe it's slightly different, but it doesn't seem to make too much of a difference. You got the GEC Marconi Avionics AI-24 Fox Hunter Stage 2G radar, which has all of the bells and whistles. You don't have HMD, but you have everything else that you would ever want from a radar system. You have the small Turbo Union engines on this machine, and then you have a metric ton of fuel, which is needed since this thing burns fuel like crazy. This vehicle is 12.7 in air and 11.7 in ground, and the reason for that is because it's a air superiority version of the Tornado. So instead of just getting the semi-actives, this thing gets the Skyflash Super Temps, but also the M120Bs. Now, what is the difference between the M120Bs and the M120As? The only thing I've really found is the seeker head. The seeker head seems to be bigger for the M120Bs, so it technically you can shoot it at greater angles, but that's really about it. You know, there's nothing really different apart from that. It also gets the M9Ms, so you can bring along some IRCCM IR guided missiles too, plus a bunch of countermeasures on top of it. So once again, 350 countermeasures, which is just like, okay, fine, we'll hit that button and we'll just make it so it just fires them all the time. So yeah, really cool. A lot of these vehicles don't have access to their cockpits yet. I'll make sure to have a look at them for you when they bring them in. Another change to the British, by the way, that I'll probably mention in another video because it's hurt me to the bone, is the Meteors. The Sea Meteor, or the Sea Jesus, and the Meteor F Mark III. Both of these vehicles have been downgraded. So instead of having Mark V Hispanos, they now have Mark IIs. And that just makes me sad. because the Mark 5s are so strong compared to the Mark 2s. So yeah, they also have bombs, but I'm pretty sure they got those last time. So yeah, that sucks. They also added another Sea Harrier for the British. This is the FA2, and the big difference between this one and the other ones, once again, AMRAAMs, AIM-120Bs, right here on the undercarriage. These actually replace the 30mm if you want to bring them along, and that means you are limited in the amount of stuff you can take. You can bring 2 AIM-120s and also 2 AIM-9Ms. That's it, which is why this vehicle is 12.3 instead of being higher. It is also 11.7 in ground, so that's a little bit better. If you want to, you can actually bring more AIM-9Ls or AIM-9Ms. You can actually bring 4 of them in total. The only thing is you lose some countermeasures. So if you want to actually bring something which which has more firepower but less survivability, you can bring this, and you only have 60 countermeasures if you do that. So yeah, it's one of those things that is a trade-off, which, you know, is usually quite good. You get an extra 320 countermeasures, but you lose 2 AIM-9Ms, and that is pretty powerful. The Rolls-Royce Pegasus Mark 101 makes this machine move, and also it does have the Ferranti Blue Vixen radar, which gives you everything you'd want. It doesn't have HMD, but it does have a pretty decent RWR alongside of everything else, telling you what's going on. So yeah, it's a very cool Harrier, and obviously the end of the line of the kind of naval side of Britain, along with the GR7 and the Sea Harrier FRS1, which only has access to 9Ls. The Japanese get the F-15J Kai, so this is very similar to the F-15C. You have the AN/APG 63V1 radar, and also you have the HMD plus a pretty decent RWR. A lot of the stuff is the same compared to the F-15C. The only difference is that the weaponry is slightly different. So you don't have as many options to hit ground targets. You only have either dumb bombs or incendiaries. Then you have AIM-9Ls, AIM-7Ms, and the AAM-4, which is an active radar homing missile specifically developed by the Japanese. Now, at least from the card here, the difference between this and the AMRAAM is the maximum overload. So where the AMRAAM is 35, this one is 40. I'm sure there are differences on top of that, but that's the main one that is there. It also gets access to the AM-3, which is the IR-CCM IR-guided missile for the Japanese, and the AIM-9L and the AIM-9M. So whichever one you feel more comfortable with, you can bring along, which is cool. There is actually an interesting thing, though. I don't think with this one, but I think with the other one, where you can't actually bring certain things together. No, it doesn't seem to be this one. It'll be the other one that we can have a look at. So yeah, the F-15J Kai is looking really good. It is also after the F-15J, which should be no surprise to anybody. So that's there. Then another 13.0, the J11A. This is the more domestically produced J11, I suppose is the way to put it, and it's very similar to the Su-27. It's incredibly similar. So they've actually given it the R-77s instead of the PL-12s, which is interesting to see. It does also have the R-73s, which are the export, the E, which is the export. Also gets the R-27 ETs and the R-27Rs, which are around, and the ERs too. So yeah, it also has the same set of bombs, just missing out the guided munitions. So technically this is a worse version of the Su-27SM, but there's hardly any difference between them compared to what you're going to be using them for. What is interesting, though, is the J8F is getting the PL-12. So that is a different missile, and that will be at a lot lower BR as well at 12.3, so more dealing with Harriers instead of other stuff. But yeah, if you're looking for what is this vehicle, it's basically an Su-27SM. Like, the only thing it's missing is some of the ground ordnance. For Italy, they don't get a new top-tier banger, and that's basically because they got one last update in the JAS, the EBS. This one does get access to the AIM-120s, by the way, so just to let you know. And then also the AVAB Plus is also getting the AIM-120s. So every nation is getting some kind of active radar homing. So as I said, I'll do a video on it later. The AMX-A1A, this one has access to a new missile and also some new guided bombs. So the new missile this gets is the MAA-1 Piranha, and this is a very interesting IR missile. So it has a maximum overload of 45 Gs and also a very good maximum speed, but it also has a pretty small missile guidance time compared to some of the other ones. And also the lock is, you know, all aspect, but it's not as good as stuff like the AIM-9L, for example, which can lock a little bit further. So this missile is a dogfighting missile, is the way to put it. You get close to the target, you fire this off, and then, you know, it just flings itself towards the target, which is really cool. So, yeah, a new little piece, which is nice. No IRCCM on it, though, so that is something to think about. The good old BAFG 230 Lizard 2 guided bombs have TNT equivalent of 117 kilos, plus you can't drop them above Mach 1, which is going to be hard for this machine to get above, and then also a good missile guidance time too. If you compare that to the standard AMX, which this one is based off of, which is in the tech tree, you can see that it gets access to the GBU paveways, which are very similar in size, and then but also it gets the larger paveways that are on offer too. So with this one, you are stuck with the lizards, but you get a ton of them. Like you can see here, you get 6 of them, so you'll be able to do quite a lot. The vehicle doesn't really have a radar. This one is like the gun radar that we've seen previously, so one which will kind of tell you the range that a target is away from you. Pretty useless in the game unless you play simulator, but it does have an RWR, which is pretty strong, and that will help it quite a lot. It also does have the IRST as well, which is quite nice as well. But it's your standard attacker. It's going to be good in ground forces. In air forces, it'll probably struggle a little bit. They do seem to have added a new set of tutorials too, because it keeps spamming me about it. So if you want to check those out, make sure to do so as you go around. But yeah, this is looking quite nice as a Italian grinder. Much better than the F-104S, which is right here. This can research the whole of the tech tree by itself, which is pretty cool. France doesn't actually get a new aviation vehicle, probably because of the fact that they're getting all of these guys, but the Mirage 2005F is getting the Mika the Mika EM active radar homing. You'll be able to bring 6 of them if you want to, and I believe this is going to be a 13.0, yep, a 13.0 in air as well, because of those Mikas. So yeah, you'll be able to barnstorm through the place with them. Then Sweden finally gets their JAS. They did have the A for the longest time, but the big difference between the A and the C is the weapons that it can get access to. The JAS-39C gets access to the AMRAAM, or as they class it, the RB-99, and it also gets the RB-74M, which is the AIM-9M. And it's kind of annoying how Sweden ends up, renaming stuff, but you get used to it. Pretty much everything else is the same. It's got the PSO-5A radar. It's also got the HMD on it, and the ridiculous amount of countermeasures that all of the Gripens have. It's going to be a monster to fight this thing, and it's going to be very hard to deal with. Looking at the secondary armaments as well, you can bring extra countermeasures with either the AIM-120s or the AIM-9s, and that is just really cool. So it doesn't matter what you take, you can bring additional countermeasures, and also it has the thermal pod plus all the guided munitions. It does get the RB-75Ts as well, which is the Maverick they added to some other vehicles, which has the SAP-HE. This one was added to the Hungarian Gripen, I believe, last update. So yeah, it's pretty cool that it's there. Then you've got the standard RB-75s too, which will actually penetrate stuff, and more paveways and all of that good stuff. So yeah, this one is the one to beat, I think is the way to put it, along with the other Gripens. Oh, there is one thing to mention for Britain too, on top of all those, of course, they have a Gripen, which is the JAS. This one has access to the data, which is right here. It looks like it has the same stats right now as the AM4, but, you know, the stat cards can lie, and it may be different. So, since it's South African, it gets access to this pretty cool missile. The last nation is the Israelis. Now, the Israelis, hey, guess what? They have a Baz, or the F-15. This is the improved Baz, or the F-15C specifically. So they had the F-15A, which is here. Now we're getting the C. The C has everything which is similar compared to the C in the American tree. So it has the APG 63V1, has the HMD, has the good RWR, has the big engines, has all of the fuel tanks that we've talked about previously. The one difference it has is secondary weapons. It can bring the GBU-8s, which is cool, and also it can bring the Python 3s. Now, the Python 3s are the ones which have a bit of an issue when it comes to bringing them. So if you bring Python 3s here, you cannot actually bring AIM-120s next to them with the fuel tank attached. So if you want the fuel tank attached, you won't be able to fit them in. You can see here that the Python is actually wide enough to get in the way of the fuel tank, which is quite funny. I'll show you what I mean on it. And so if you're creating stuff for this, just remember that. It can be a bit of a pain when setting this up. So you can see here, the Pythons are quite wide, and they've actually taken into account that this is so wide, if you get the extra fuel tank, which comes down here, it hits into the Python. So if you want to actually bring that fuel tank with the AIM-120 attached, like this, you actually have to swap that Python out for a AIM-9M, which is pretty cool. I think that's a nice little touch that they've done there. But yeah, so they have the Python 3s, which are the very good overloading missiles, but they don't have IRCCM. So people just bring the AIM-9M because they're more likely to hit. But it does have the GBUs and all the other stuff. So pretty nice indeed. A lot of top tier vehicles coming in, and a lot of them are very powerful. And it will be really nice to see how the meta changes, especially now with the little bit of BR decompression that we have. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.